Hello, everyone, and welcome to the More Post to Post channel. This is our second channel. Our main channel is Post to Post, where we talk hockey. And this channel is where we talk about whatever we want to talk about. And today's episode, if you can't tell by the title, is Dunkirk, the movie, directed by Christopher Nolan. And the score was done by Hans Zimmer. The runtime was 106 minutes. And I just want to go through the cast because it is important to say the names. So the main cast here is, I think his name is pronounced Finn Whitehead. He plays Tommy. Damien Bernard, he plays the French soldier. Anirin Bernard plays Gibson. Tom Hardy plays the pilot, the Spitfire pilot, Ferrier. Mark Rylance plays Mr. Dawson. Barry Keoghan plays George. And Kenneth Branagh plays Commander Bolton. So first off, we are not movie professional reviewers. This is the first movie review we've ever done, let alone on camera. So this is the first for us. Don't judge us too harshly. We're new at this. We just got back from the theater. So we thought, you know what, why not film a review of this movie for the second channel of ours?
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it since we left.
Purposely.
We literally left the theater an hour ago.
Yep.
Drove here, set up the studio, just did a little bit of gathering of historical items that may help us tell our story.
Exactly.
And here we are. So we're going to be hearing the review of the movie first time from each other.
Which is probably how it should be. There's no sense in having the same conversation twice.
That's right.
So that was the plan. So the storyline of Dunkirk is very historically accurate. I can say that. That was one of Christopher Nolan's goals, is to make it as historically accurate as possible. So the plot is basically the evacuation of Allied soldiers, the British Empire and France, who were cut off and surrounded by the German army from the beaches and harbor of Dunkirk, France, between May 26 to June 4th, 1940, during the Battle of France in World War II. So we can elaborate that on a little bit. Before we do, I will say, if you haven't seen the movie yet, there are going to be spoilers in our conversation, so might be a good time to stop if you really don't want to know what happens. If you don't care or you've already seen the movie, then you shouldn't be disappointed, I guess.
Of course, Dunkirk being a historical event that's being truly told.
Exactly.
There's no secret as to how it turns out.
Yeah.
But the movie, to the extent that it follows individual characters, is not something that you'd know just by knowing general World War II history.
Exactly. They've had the last, 87 years to learn about it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're not ruining anything here, but...
Yeah, more like 77. But
77, whatever. Close enough.
A long time.
So there's not really a main protagonist in this movie. The protagonist is basically the whole Allied forces.
Right.
There's no one specific character who is the hero or anything. And the movie actually follows different characters throughout the entire movie. And interestingly enough, it changes the timeline. You see an event take place from one viewpoint, maybe the pilot, and then 30 minutes later in the video, you see the same events take place from a different angle, from a different character of the movie. I thought that was really interesting.
I thought it was interesting and a little disconcerting for me. I like following things linearly.
Yeah.
I don't care for the whole jumping around thing. I got it. I was able to follow because it was, only 3 or 4 main perspectives.
Yeah, it was done well.
But it was done very well. But the first couple of times it happened, I was wondering what I was missing here. What's going on? Didn't that thing already happen? Or, there's 3 Spitfires in the original flight that leave England.
Yes.
And various things happen to each of those 3 airplanes. And you wonder if, is this the second airplane? Does the same thing happen to him that happened to the first airplane? But then you realize it's not the second airplane. It's a retelling of the first airplane.
Yeah, I found it to be an actual, a nice surprise that they did that. I thought that was really cool. There's the Spitfire pilots. They're a group of one of the main characters. The other group is the guys on the boat who leave England to go to Dunkirk to basically take survivors back. The Allied forces have commissioned public vessels, I guess, to go across the English Channel, get these soldiers waiting on the beach of Dunkirk and bring them home because they couldn't send their ships and their frigates or whatever they had because they were getting torpedoed and bombed, and
the water was too shallow to bring them close enough to shore.
Exactly.
So they thought, well, what can we do other than take over, commandeer the fishing fleets and the pleasure boat fleet, and off you go, boys, and see how close you can get to grab some of our fellows and bring them back.
And then the third group was the soldiers on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, all the combination of English soldiers and French soldiers and Belgian soldiers,
mm-hmm.
all waiting on the beach to be rescued. And it didn't follow too many of them, but there was basically like little groups. It kind of followed the guys on the dock trying to get on the boat, and then the guys on the beach trying to find their own ship to leave. And then there was points where they would just get randomly bombed on the beach by the German planes.
Yeah.
And then they would just stand up and go back to doing whatever they were doing. It's strange.
Interestingly, they'd stand up and get back in line.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is so British. Chin up, let's get in line now. We have to wait in line.
Yeah.
And the movie starts when the, first character breaks through the village and he finally comes out onto the beach. Everybody's in nice orderly lines just standing there.
Yeah.
And then not too long after that, a couple of Stukas come in and dive bomb and strafe the whole beach.
Exactly.
And they all scatter and dive. And then when the planes are gone, they all get back in line, except for the dead guys, And
yeah.
It's really something, and I think that says something. I think there's things that are deeper in that movie than everybody can get something from it.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you just want to see the action and the blowing up thing, that's fine. You'll be happy. But like the pilots, for instance, they were a big part of this.
Huge, yeah.
But you never saw their faces, hardly.
Not really. You could tell that one was Tom Hardy,
mm-hmm.
Just because he's so easily recognizable. But the majority of the time, they had the masks on.
That's right.
And I guess the fourth person was the Commander Bolton on the dock, telling the ships where to go, who goes where, and giving updates to the rest of the
that was very well
fleet.
done.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I thought he was a great figure.
Oh yeah, he was one of the best characters in the film. I think he did an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I found most interesting about the film was the sound of the bullets, the sound of the planes and the bombs dropping.
Mm-hmm.
It was so crisp and sharp and just insanely loud. Like it scared me at points.
Well, I saw you with your fingers towards your ears
and near
several
the end
times
because I thought the ship was going to blow.
Oh,
so I had one finger in my ear because there was oil in the water and stuff.
Right.
And I thought, okay, the music, Hans Zimmer's score here is bringing up an explosion. But it didn't happen, luckily for my ears. But I thought the sound was so well done, minus the end, and we'll get into this a little bit because I have a gripe about something specifically. But the sound throughout the whole movie I thought was amazing. Some movies you don't notice the sound. Some movies you notice the sound because it's terrible. And some movies that are really well done audibly, you have to clap your hands. And this, for me, this is one of those movies. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. These are propeller planes, but they go at such speeds that they develop a whistling, screaming sound when they get going so fast. And that was very well represented in the movie.
Yes, minus the end when we'll talk about that a little later. So what was your impression of maybe the first half of the movie where they were building the storylines and introducing the characters and stuff?
I thought it moved a little slow, but I think it had to. When I got to the end of the movie and I looked back at the whole thing in a timeline, I think it was probably well done.
Mm-hmm.
I got a little impatient with it because I thought I was expecting there would be more of, the political interplay, Churchill and the speeches and the operations going on back in London to run this whole thing. But it really, I think on purpose, left all of those big shots out of it, and it became more about the individual people, including one particular small privately owned boat that goes across and encounters some very interesting scenes and scenarios as it goes and comes back. So the first half of the movie overall, I think I was impressed with maybe the sense, and I hope other people come away with this sense. I was born less than 20 years after this happened. And now 20 years, at my age, 20 years isn't that long. So I feel almost a bit of a connection with that time because, when I was in school and when I was in Boy Scouts and Air Cadets, the people that were in command of those things were people who were involved at this time. So anyway, what I think people, or what I hope people come away with is the appreciation that our very way of life was at stake. Our very existence was on the line. Not like the warfare that we have today. As important as it is to be in certain places and do certain things, and some people want us in Afghanistan and some people don't, and I get that. But, what happens on a given day in Afghanistan or Iraq or somewhere else isn't going to change our way of life. What happened back then, though, could have a drastic change on the way of life of everybody.
Well, you had Hitler, who was trying to be the ruler of the world, basically, and if he had have gotten his way, England and maybe the United States and Canada would have been no more or invaded, and the world would be a different place. So you literally had to give it your all and stand as tall as you could and not back down.
And they did, and when these boats and ships went across to rescue the men off the beach, ordinary folks were doing that. Ordinary people.
Just civilians and fishermen.
And women. There were women and nurses and serving sisters, I presume, that were on board and happy to be there and doling out soup and coffee to the guys when they got on board. And, and that's all. And I think you and I both watched a video this morning from Global Television in Calgary where an elderly gentleman, 98 years old, was being interviewed just after seeing Dunkirk. And he was there himself. And he was brought to tears by the movie from the reality of it all. He said it was just like the real thing and brought all the memories back.
Yeah, it brought all the memories back. He was in tears. And he said, all my friends are gone now, but I still remember them. I still have memories. And he was talking about how intelligent the human race is, but we're still so stupid and make such silly mistakes like war.
Yeah, a very, very powerful interview. And so many people can't speak anymore like he can because they're long gone. Old age got them where they died in the war when they were 20.
Exactly. It was pretty crazy. And I thought, just to go back about the civilian fishermen and stuff like that, the main group of 3 to 4 guys on that one boat, they rescued one pilot or soldier or whoever he was sitting on a sinking ship on the edge of it. Or
I presume he was a rescued soldier that was on his way from the Dunkirk beach back to England when the ship got obviously torpedoed.
Yeah.
And it was upside down, and he was the only guy left sitting on the hull.
He was just sitting there, and they brought him on board, and he was very shell-shocked, is I guess the word that they used. And he wouldn't talk. He didn't want any tea. He was scared, and he just was not mentally all there. Throughout the movie, he came around and started to get a bit of his personality back, and he snapped once, and bad things happened. But it didn't really have a lot to do with the general happenings of Dunkirk, but I'm kind of glad that they put it in there to show you the reality of the situation and what soldiers went through and how they dealt with it. Shell-shocked is a big term, and it happens. So to see a representation of that on film, I think was important.
Yeah, we'd call that an operational stress injury, or the more commonly known term, PTSD today.
Yeah.
Clearly that's what he had. Probably had it for his entire life if he was a real character, and there probably were characters similar to him.
Yeah, like he thought he was rescued, and he thought he was going back home. Thank you for rescuing me. And then he found out that he was headed back to Dunkirk because they were on their way to get more soldiers to rescue, and he was having none of that. He tried to get them to turn around, go back to England, and they locked him in a room basically beneath the ship.
He became a management problem.
He did, yeah. So I guess we can talk about some spoilers. As we all know, a lot of people died. However, a lot of people were saved, and there was around 400,000 around the beach of Dunkirk, and they thought that they were only going to be able to save 35,000 like
or so.
Yeah. And they ended up saving
almost 300,000.
Almost 300,000. So that's huge. And it's so in thanks to those civilians and fishermen and everything.
And the war had only been a brand new thing at that time. You know, if you go back to how World War II started, Hitler invades Poland in September of 1939.
Yeah.
He starts moving west across Europe. And by the spring of 1940, he's basically got all of Europe. France has been cut in half. The southern half of France has adopted a new government that's friendly to the Nazis. Spain is neutral. Basically, everybody else except Switzerland has been dominated by Germany.
Yeah.
And there was this last little pocket of resistance. And then they were gone. And it took 4 years for them to get back. So 4 years went by without an Allied boot, you know, formally on the ground in Europe. And that's how long it took to build the war machine that it was going to take to come back. And
pretty crazy.
Oh, man. You know,
stressful.
Unbelievable.
We go to work every day and stress about our jobs, but
or traffic.
Or traffic, yeah. But back then, I can't even imagine. But one of the big parts of the movie were the Spitfire pilots.
Yeah.
And they did very honorable things in the war and also in this movie. But I think that was the focus for us in the movie because my grandfather, your father-in-law, was a Spitfire pilot back in World War II.
In World War II.
Yeah, I'm not. You know better than me what battles he fought in, and you might have a record of it right there in that little book. Can you tell me off the top of your head which battles he actually fought in?
Yep. He was not in the Battle of Britain, which was 1941-42, which was really an air war that took place over Britain, won eventually by the Allies. He didn't get over there until late 1943 or early 1944 because he had to do his training and everything first.
Right.
So he came from central New Brunswick. He was brought into the Canadian forces, as they would have been at the time, likely the Army, and he was assigned to flight training. So he went up to Aylmer, Ontario, and maybe other places, and flew Tiger Moths and Harvards, and eventually qualified to fly Hurricanes and Spitfires. And he flew them both in the war. He ended up in England. We have his original logbook with us. And the first entries are in May of 1944. And he's posted to the 229 Squadron in Hornchurch. And they go to Coltishall, Detling. They fly through July and August. He's flying mostly Spitfires, but occasionally Hurricanes as he goes from place to place. A lot of his time was spent with the 421 Squadron. And in the 421 Squadron, we managed to find a book, your mother and I, back when, years and years ago, we were Christmas shopping and found this in a bookstore in Fredericton. And this is a history of one of the squadrons he flew with, and his name is even in the book.
Wow.
And his name is in the book because he's listed as having damaged two ME-109s. He says, and he told us, and he only passed away a couple of years ago, but when he was able, he told us that although his official record is that those aircraft were damaged, he saw them go in. He did shoot them down.
Oh, okay.
And he was happy that they only showed in his records as being damaged.
Yeah, because he wasn't proud of
not proud of having killed anybody, and he knew he killed at least two pilots.
Yeah,
German pilots, and he was over Holland, he was over Belgium, but this would be when the Allies were coming back in.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was over there at the time of D-Day. He flew beach patrols over top of the landing zone. He flew deeper and deeper into Europe and got into some dogfights with some German airplanes. And the last entries here are in June and July of 1945. The war ended in May in Europe.
Yep.
And he was there and did some more flying for a little bit. He had well over 600 hours in total of combat flying and came home to tell the tale, although he didn't tell many tales.
No, he didn't like to talk about it at all.
Not a bit.
No, I remember him saying that he hated flying the Hurricanes and loved flying the Spitfires.
Yeah, he loved the Spitfires. And he flew the Mark 9. He flew a few others, mostly the Mark 9.
Yeah.
And he just thought it was a beautiful thing to do, you know, and the Hurricanes, not so much.
No, not so much.
Yeah, it's funny. I told him a story about an acquaintance of mine that was working on restoring a Hurricane up in Gatineau, Quebec at Vintage Wings. And he was, working on this Hurricane. So I was quite happy to tell your grandfather that, I knew a guy that was working on restoring a hurricane, and his reply was, "Why bother?"
Yeah.
I thought that was very funny.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he came home with this. This was given to him as a present, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it came from. The provenance of this is somewhat murky, but this, if you're just listening to the audio podcast, Neil and I are referring to an old General Electric radio that somebody made for him. I think the radio was basically already made, and what they did was it's in a box, and they made a beautiful paint job on the front of the box that is dedicated to him. It has the Royal Canadian Air Force insignia, his regimental number, his name, and his hometown of Doketown, New Brunswick. And if you lift the front cover of this, you can actually see the radio. It's an AM radio made by GE. It looks to be roughly of the vintage of the perhaps mid to late 1940s. So I doubt he came home from Europe with this, but probably it was presented to him afterward by a friend or an acquaintance, someone who wanted to give him something special to recognize his service. He was not a guy to wear medals. He was not a guy to go to the Legion or celebrate in either way the 11th of November. He was very much a quiet man to himself, and I wouldn't be surprised if, looking back at his life after the war, he didn't have some operational stress issues
definitely.
as well that maybe changed his personality some.
Yeah, because he was, I don't want to say, he wasn't sheltered, but he liked to be alone and tinker on cars and do his own thing and stuff like that. So
yeah, he did have some very, very close friends, but only a small group of them. He wasn't, out there.
Yeah.
If he was around now, he wouldn't be on Facebook.
Yeah, he wasn't a social butterfly.
No.
So that brings us back to the actual Spitfire pilots in the movie. They did some very honorable things, mainly due to fuel. They only had enough fuel to come in, do a little bit of battling, a little bit of scouting, and then return. One was shot down immediately, one of the three. The second one eventually ditched in the water.
After being damaged.
After being damaged, yeah. And then the third, Tom Hardy, the main pilot, he had instrument issues because he was shot at, and his gauge wasn't working, so he couldn't tell how much fuel he had. So he was basing his gallons off of the other pilot before he went down. He gave him a reading of how much fuel they had. And he had the decision to go back home when he was low on fuel, or stay out and take down a few more bombers and then eventually ditch himself somewhere or land on the beach or do whatever he needed to do. And he made the very brave decision to stay behind and try and take down some more fighters and some more bombers to, in turn, help protect the boats and people on the beach. So that was pretty cool to see.
It was very cool. And it showed the decision point. He's obviously there looking down at the little numbers he's drawn on his instrument panel, trying to help him gauge how much fuel he would have left.
Yeah.
And you can see him looking one way and looking the other way and then making his decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important part of the movie.
There were a few inaccuracies, I thought, because we're aviation geeks, you way more so than me, but the inaccuracies that I saw were when he was firing his guns on the Spitfire. Back then it was just machine guns, and it's machine guns now too, but he wasn't leading his shot. I found that when he actually fired, the plane was on target when they were moving.
Yeah, which really would be too late.
It'd be way too late. You had to lead your target because of your planes moving, and so I was disappointed with that. I would have figured that they would have got that right, and they did at some points, but in other points they showed him firing in a turn with the crosshairs dead on the plane and hitting the plane, and that would never happen. Those bullets would have gone way behind him. But the other inaccuracy I thought was near the end when he was shot at, or he ran out of fuel, and he was gliding at, I don't know, 300 knots or something like that. And
Seemed to be.
He went up the beach, no sound. I didn't like that. It would have made at least some kind of sound, I would have thought.
Well, it might have been a bit of a whistling sound.
Just a little bit of a whistling sound.
But probably wouldn't have been heard on the ground.
But he wasn't that high, though.
I know, but
I just feel
with
like
all
there
the
would've
other
been
noise
something.
going on, I don't.
Well, it was silent at that point of the movie.
Yeah.
Anyway. So he goes up the beach. I don't know how high he was. Maybe 200 feet, 300 feet, something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe higher than that, probably.
maybe 5 at the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes up the beach, lickety split, and something else happens in the movie, and that goes back, and the propeller is not movable. He's out of gas. He's literally gliding. So something else happens, and then he comes back up the beach at the same elevation, at the same speed.
Yeah.
So he would have had to turn around and come back. That's just not how it works. So that was frustrating a little bit.
Yeah. And when I did my flying training, we were in aircraft like Cessnas and Pipers that have a pretty good glide ratio when the power's off. And you have to practice that, cut the engine and see how far you can glide. It's not very, it's certainly not as far as a loaded Spitfire.
Yeah.
They're made of wood, so they're not that heavy, but really, come on.
He's got a Gatling gun and bullets and all this other stuff. And he would have lost so much momentum and elevation when he made the turn to come back around.
Yeah.
If he did make it to come back around, he wouldn't have been going as fast as he was.
For him to make a pass southbound across the beach and then make another pass northbound across the beach and then land essentially in German territory.
Yeah, way.
The Germans had the northern part of the beach by then.
Yeah.
He would have had to start that whole business at 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And in the movie, he clearly was no more than a few hundred feet up.
Yeah.
But
so a little bit of Hollywood there, which is fine.
Yeah.
But that's basically the only thing I didn't like about the movie, and it didn't really bother me that much. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Other than that, is there anything that bothered you?
Not really. No, I wasn't bothered. That disturbed me just a little bit. The pilot person in me went, that can't happen that way. I was quite impressed with the internal cockpit. Like they had the throttle on the right side when he's cranking the gear. It was on the proper side where it ought to be. And it looks like they went back and, worked really hard at making sure that the masks and all of the, the uniform and equipment were faithful and true. They did a wonderful job.
They did.
And it's a movie that I think everybody should see just so they can appreciate how dim the thing was at that time.
Yeah.
The future. There really was no future.
Well, there was so much frustration because they were waiting to be picked up, the soldiers on the beach, waiting to be picked up. Where's our friends? Where's our army? Where's our Air Force coming to get us? No one's coming. Well, we're going to die here.
Yeah.
It didn't look good. So
it didn't. And, war is an awful business. And, even defenseless people that are just standing there on the beach, some of them not even armed, are just as big a targets for the Germans as if they were shooting back all the time.
Exactly.
And that's the way war works, It was a nasty business.
And the French get made fun of a lot because I don't know, they didn't put up as much as fight as they should have, and they're retreated during times, I guess. But they were an important part of Dunkirk. They held the line as long as they could and allowed the British and Belgian soldiers to get out. And at the end of the movie, you see Commander Bolton stay behind to help the French get out. And,
it was clearly a pecking order situation where the British soldiers got first crack at getting off the beach, and the French soldiers had to wait. And, you think of the Allies as being one big happy family, but there was a lot of tension back then.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
France collapsed, so did Holland. Holland, France, and Belgium collapsed way quicker than anyone thought they would, and the Germans just rolled over. And I think the British probably blamed some of the Continental soldiers for not...
I think so, too. Yeah.
It certainly looked that way in the movie. And maybe that blame is well-placed, or maybe it was dramatic. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
We saw an interesting trailer before the movie called Churchill or something about Churchill. It looked really interesting.
It looked really good. In fact, I thought for a minute I was in the wrong theater, thinking, well, if they're showing us a trailer for Dunkirk, how can they be showing us Dunkirk? Because the Dunkirk theme was the first maybe 20 or 30% of the trailer. Was about Dunkirk and getting off the beaches, and I thought, oh my God, we're in the wrong movie. But it looks really good. I can't wait to see that one.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I think it comes out in November. I think it was.
I didn't remember.
We'll definitely make sure we see it and maybe film a review just like this, because this is something we'd like to do on the second channel just for fun, just making videos of whatever we want to make or talk about. We like watching movies and talking about them. So if people like it, maybe we'll keep doing it. If people don't like it, maybe we'll keep doing it anyway.
Yeah,
because it's fun for us.
Why not?
So I guess this kind of wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to say about the movie? Or
I don't go to movies very often. It's just not something I think to do. Not that the theater's that far away. It's just, you have to block off 2 hours of time usually when you're trying to do something else. So I appreciate your idea to go and to go in the summertime when they have matinees. We were there in the late afternoon start time, which didn't interfere with anything else in life. And I'm really, really glad I went, and I want to do more movies.
Excellent.
Now.
Well, I look forward to going with you.
Alrighty.
Well, yeah, thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming with me to the movie. Hopefully you guys at home enjoyed this. If you haven't seen the movie and you've watched this far, I'm sorry that we've spoiled some parts for you, but definitely go see the movie. It's amazing. It's well worth the money. We went on cheap day, $6.99 ticket.
$6.99.
I would have gladly paid $11 or $12 to see that. It was great.
Yeah, it was worth its weight in gold, that movie. Really good.
Absolutely. So good job, Christopher Nolan, on that movie. Good job, Hans Zimmer, on the score. I thought it was really well done. The budget was $100 million.
Oh, yeah.
And it made $50 million in its opening weekend.
Wow.
So not bad in an opening weekend. So I assume it's probably going to be well over the budget of the movie, and it'll be pretty profitable.
It's going to take Connor McDavid 10 years to make that kind of money.
Yeah. A little hockey throw in there for the main channel folk.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much for watching this. We really appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed to this second channel we have, More Post to Post, I hope you can hit the subscribe button and help us grow over here, because we're going to do lots on this channel as well.
I've had a sneak peek at some of the stuff you're getting ready to put up, and it's going to be a riot.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do some more taste tests and just some funny stuff. Just have some fun. All right, we'll catch you guys in the next video. And thanks again for coming to the movie with me, and thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Adios.